Hello, and welcome. Uh, my name is Dāvis, and I'm glad that I have this opportunity to talk around and about. I would say not one of the most discussed, but definitely one of the hottest topics out there for this year, which is green finance and fintech trends in 2021. So me, myself, I'm managing Swedbank co-creation space, which is a platform where we support and help growing early stage startups within fintech and sustainability sectors. We give them an easy access to our startup community, events, experts from the bank in different areas, and co-working space for free as well. So during this event, we're planning to discuss what is green finance and what are the biggest opportunities and challenges within this topic, and what are this year's fintech trends, and in general, what should we expect from this year in terms of green finance and all around this topic. But before we go into it, I want to say that I'm really happy that we have been joined by Kerra Pringle, who is the brand manager at Tumelo, and she will share her perspective and view on this topic. So yeah, hi, Kerra. Do you hear me?
Hi, Dāvis. Yes, I can. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so my name's Cara. I work for a impact-focused startup fintech based in the UK. So the fintech I work for is called Tumelo, and we're very involved in this sort of sustainable investment side of finance, I suppose. We're a relatively new product and a new fintech operating in this space. Our product is kind of pioneering in the pensions and investments area, but I can tell you more about that later. So in terms of, I suppose, my experience in this area, I actually was born and raised in Hong Kong, which is obviously a very kind of big financial city, lots of kind of fintechs up and rising there. And that's where I started working in kind of marketing in this area. And so now at Tumelo, I'm the brand manager. So I am basically making sure that everyone around the world is aware of the different sustainable solutions in finance, including obviously our solution. And essentially raising awareness around the investment of pensions. So just to kind of introduce a bit about the product that I work for, it's really interesting as, like I mentioned, it's quite a new solution in the world actually, but specifically in the UK as well. And essentially the issue we're addressing is that many people around the world have pensions that are invested in areas and avenues that they don't really understand. So every month, a bit of money gets taken out of their salary and put towards their future retirement savings. But many people kind of think this is a really boring topic, don't really engage with it, don't really understand how it works, when actually it's not that complicated. The pensions invest in lots of companies. And what we're trying to do is educate people on that, make them understand that not only is their money invested, but if their money was invested sustainably, it would be making the world a much better place, and that they could also have a voice on the kind of shareholder issues that those companies bring up, that could also help make corporations act more sustainably and responsibly. So that in a one sentence is kind of what the product does and the solution that I'm working for at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Kerra. How are you in general? How has been this year so far for you? And have you like already used working from home, or still miss the fresh coffee and morning chat with your colleagues? How has it been?
Yeah, it's been good. So obviously a big adjustment to change to all of a sudden. Every meeting is on Zoom, just like this. It definitely had its ups and downs, as much as every business across the world, but also in terms of the business, I suppose things have been really well for us because it's an early product, and potentially because everything is online, it means that people are more accessible than they perhaps were, especially, very senior members of investment institutions who might be really difficult to sit down for a coffee with, but if you're just asking for a 20-minute call, so maybe that's helped. And I suppose it means that, we can all travel and work from wherever. I'm currently in France right now, even though normally I'd be working in London. So yeah, it's been obviously challenging, but we've made the most of it, I suppose.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for being here with us. And I think we will have a great discussion for the next hour and so. And before we kick this event off, I want to remind all the viewers, feel free to ask your questions as we're planning to have a Q&A session in the end of the event. I think we will spare a few minutes for that as well. So as we know, green finance and FinTech trends are two quite, I think, big topics. So we'll try to do our best to cover majority of areas as much as we will be able to. So just to give a little bit of a framework, maybe, so at its simplest, green finance is any structured financial activity, a product or service that's been created to ensure to basically ensure better environmental outcome. It includes loans, debt mechanisms, investments that are used to encourage development of green projects or minimize impact on the climate basically that's the main thing, or even combination of both. And we have seen a rise in technology development mixed with the current global situation we are facing right now. And we see a lot of opportunities and challenges on the way. On talking about the pandemic situation as well, it also shows that there's a lot of opportunities for countries to rethink traditional models of finance and rely more on technology and sustainability. So we can see that financial institutions and organizations are becoming more digital. Mobile banking is thriving. We are shifting our focus into more sustainable investments and adapting, technology strategies to become more green, right? So. But before we go into these topics and areas, I would like to come back a little bit to what you, Kerra, mentioned about pension systems, and as I know that you're working with that directly in Tumelo, and maybe you could give some background so you can comment on that about our situation, at least in Latvia, and as also different regions that we see. As well here, and then other regions, we see that big portion of society that does not really know a lot about their pension systems and mainly where their money is invested. And I think it's a really important factor to be informed about whether the investments are directed to sustainable sectors or not. So a lot is on the shoulders of the financial institutions and organizations to give some transparency and educate customers about the pension plan investments. So just to mention, our example. So for example, for Swedbank, assets of second and third pillar pension plans are invested in accordance with I would say highest sustainability criteria. So we're investing in average 80% of asset funds towards sustainable sectors, and in some plans even up to 97%. And there's different initiatives that we're planning to launch as well to push this average number closer to 100%, of course, as well other organizations are trying to do. While we have other institutions that are offering such plans as selective pension plans, where you can choose your plan based on its positive impact to ESG performance, for example. So maybe, Kerra, maybe we could go back to Tumelo. Maybe you could give some little bit background of the situation in UK. How are you solving it with Tumelo? And maybe you have some information on the situation in other regions, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, I think it was a great kind of first definition as to kind of what green finance is. And, as you mentioned, there's so many different areas that green finance covers, whether it's renewable energy sources, anything to do with kind of reducing carbon footprints. But why pensions is, I suppose, so relevant to this topic, not only because of, I'm directly involved in pensions, but trillions and trillions of pounds or trillions of euros or dollars are caught up in the pensions industry. So if you're going to channel an aspect of finance to be sustainable, then arguably you'd be making one of the most kind of amounts of impact by focusing on this industry that so much money is caught up in. And then secondly, for most people in the world, or I suppose in countries that have pension systems similar to the UK and other European countries, a pension is the biggest amount of money they'll ever raise in their entire lives. So this is for everyday general people, the majority, not the billionaires, celebrities. So for everyday people, that sum of money that saves for their retirement is the biggest amount. So if, as environmental issues and sustainability becomes more popular, people want to do things like recycle, maybe they want to fly less, reduce their carbon footprint, maybe they want to go vegan. Whereas actually what we found is that it's something like 27 times more impactful to ensure that your pension is invested sustainably than it is to give up flying and go vegan for the rest of your life, which is pretty crazy if you think about it like that, right? And so I suppose what we're trying to do is firstly make people realize that, make people understand that actually that really boring subject they don't want to think about, that's just some life admin. If they're interested in sustainability, then this is a serious way they can actually make a genuine difference. And then secondly, like you also said at Swedbank, lots of financial institutions are slowly but surely increasing sustainable options for people's investments, which is fantastic. But there's a issue that comes before that that we've definitely acknowledged in the UK, and I know there's a global problem, and that's that people don't understand their pensions. They're not well educated on the topic, mainly because the industry has been covered with financial jargon, words people don't understand. So I guess what the first point to address this issue is to make people engage and understand and feel interested. So our platform shows, and you said this word earlier, transparently the investments. So it will show people everything that their pension is being funded towards. And this is mainly loads of company names that everyone recognizes. It could be Facebook, Coca-Cola, Amazon, Shell, loads of names that people recognize. So this is when people realize that, oh my gosh, I know all of these companies and my money is actually being invested in them. So that's really important, because maybe there's companies like tobacco or oil that people are not happy with, and they can ask to switch to a portfolio that's more sustainable. But also what we're trying to do foremost is then encourage them to vote on those companies' ESG questions. ESG is a term I'm not sure we've mentioned yet, but essentially it's very entwined with green finance, and it stands for environmental, social, and governance issues. So when these companies that your pension's invested in have a vote where they're saying, do we want to be more environmentally friendly in terms of our packaging at Coca-Cola, or do we want to have more equal gender pay at Netflix, or whatever it is, human rights issues, animal rights issues, we allow the underlying investor, so the everyday pension member, to submit a vote preference on what they believe, so that their money is essentially aligning with their personal beliefs that are supporting a kind of more ethical and sustainable investment system. And I suppose in the UK, if I'm going to talk about that issue kind of more specifically, we are seeing that people are becoming more engaged with their pensions. But I suppose it's about giving them something really easy and tangible to do that will make it sustainable and ethical, instead of them having to read all of these manuals on what is in an ESG fund that some bank is offering. So it's making something really easy to be sustainable there, to engage them, essentially, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good points on this this topic as well. I wanted to maybe ask a follow-up question. You mentioned that, this, as you see, pension is a huge part, under green finance wing, as a I would say a sector. But do you know, or what would be the second most important thing from your perspective? What is under green finance, and like what activities should we work on to improve in this sector? Besides pensions, maybe you could mention some bigger pillars as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one trend that we're seeing some financial institutions do at the moment is making big commitments to net zero. So this is aligning with kind of, I suppose, a massive trend at the moment, and also alignment with the Paris Climate Agreement, as well as United Nations sustainability goals. It's becoming popular for lots of companies to publicly declare that they have a plan in place to be net zero, which means that they are not emitting anything harmful for the environment, so that they're carbon neutral, so to speak, which in finance is a huge deal, because a lot of financial decisions in terms of where they're investing, who their partnerships are with, can be with a lot of the biggest and most harmful emitters of carbon, or of kind of the worst basically players in the sustainability world, whether it's in oil or tobacco. So having the financial institutions support on that is huge at the moment, and we are seeing lots of people making plans to commit to being net zero by 2050. But some institutions have even made the commitment to be net zero right now, and so they are taking part in carbon offsetting programs, where they're basically countering any damage that them as an institution are causing by investing lots of money in other avenues that will kind of balance that off, which is obviously hugely progressive. So I guess that's another massive trend that's happening generally in finance, not just in pensions.
Okay, thank you very much for elaborating this as well. So you mentioned the ESG, and like mainly you defined it already, and I had a question. What where we are with in, I would say, evolving in this around what activities are evolving around ESG right now, as comparing to, I don't know, last year, and maybe you can see some future trends for that as well. Where are we going with it, and what could we expect in terms of activities in ESG sector as well? Maybe some kind of upcoming regulations, or shifting investment focus areas, or cultural wise. So maybe you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think ESG as a term has been relatively new, or newly this popular in the kind of industry, and that could be for loads of different reasons. I suppose the issues generally have been building momentum for the past few years anyway, with the environmental, obviously climate issues are always very high on everyone's agenda. Lots of David Attenborough documentaries has definitely made this topic very popular in the UK in particular, but also with social issues. We've had the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, that also kind of intertwines with governance and how companies are acting. So I suppose these issues have been building momentum for quite some time. It's interesting that you mentioned regulation, because I believe that where ESG first as a term picked up was, in my understanding or my personal experience with the term, was in a United Nations report that was released a few years ago about fiduciary duty. So fiduciary duty is basically about corporations and company boards acting responsibly for their shareholders or making kind of responsible investment decisions. So I think the report that was released a few years ago highlighted that companies were really failing to consider lots of long-term investment values, mainly these ESG issues, as it mentioned, as a kind of failure of fiduciary duty. So that's kind of, I guess, started this topic into the regulation arena, where it's becoming more of a sort of policy issue that is really needed to be implemented, because the finance industry has not naturally chosen to be very kind of forward in supporting environmental and social governance issues on its own accord. Whereas it's found that regulations needed to kind of step in a bit more to advise based on stewardship and fiduciary duty, obviously, like I've been mentioning. So I'd say that is my own interpretation of how ESGs come to light at the moment, and how it's become so important. And I guess in the future, I would definitely expect to see more regulations around this. So I know at the moment, again in the UK, really importantly, the pensions minister has just announced that they're going to put together a working group of people that will ensure that fund managers are making better stewardship decisions for the people whose money they're representing, because they're finding, and it's naturally so, because the industry has kind of gone down for so many years. Fund managers build relationships with other corporations, so there becomes other issues as to, or other implications are involved when fund managers decide how they want to vote at a company shareholder meeting. That might not necessarily be because it's the best ESG decision. So regulations having to come in place to make sure people are aligning stronger with ESG issues, because they are so important. And I definitely think that it will take more regulation to fully get the industry to a really sustainable place, that's being, very stewardship led for their own members and for the people's whose money is essentially kind of supporting the system at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. And on the same topic, I think I have thought about, and I think it's a lot of this has been discussed all around on that we have different instruments which helps us to measure and define the criteria of what is sustainable and green, and on what is not. And yeah, I just wanted to know your thoughts on where is the line that we can where we cross the line to defining making the definition of what is green and what is not. So I think it's one of big challenges that we're facing, and maybe you could share your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, sure. That's a big question. I guess, yeah, I mean, defining kind of what's sustainable, definitely the United Nations is, one of the biggest players in kind of helping advise people in all types of institutions and organizations beyond just finance on what our goals should be and what we need to achieve for obviously planet survival and kind of retention. So I guess we have the sustainable development goals, which I do think that a lot of institutions do try and align with as much as possible. So I know that another ESG trend within the finance space is this idea of ESG scoring metrics, where before people make an investment decision, not normal people, but fund managers, asset managers, there's an ESG score next to the company or even the fund that basically will tell the fund manager or whoever's making the decision how ESG that company or fund is or behaves. But the problem with this, and this does kind of intertwine with your question about definition, is that who is defining what the most ESG metric should be. There isn't one, and it's just different institutions coming up with their own criteria for how the metrics should be calculated. And it's still a really positive thing. Don't get me wrong. I think ESG metrics are really important because they make investment decisions easier to be more sustainable. But yeah, this idea of definition is really important because nobody's really got the kind of power or has the right to decide for everyone in the world, any financial institution, what ESG is. It's completely biased. There's so many different issues in place. And what we see a lot as well in finance is that most people focus on the environmental aspect of E, and we do less focus on the social aspects and the governance aspects. And that can be seen in the metric calculations. But I suppose back to the sort of sustainable development goals, we have seen that some other fintechs that are putting together formulas for ESG metrics are directly aligning their scoring metrics to the sustainable development goals. So I think that's great. I mean, me personally, I think that's how people should be doing it. The sustainable development goals have, been put together by real experts in this area. And if we were aligning all of our new sort of, I suppose, ESG scoring and aligning everything that we do to progress green finance in the industry along those United Nations goals, then I guess it would mean that we'd all be a lot more targeted and it would be a lot more clear as to kind of the direction we want to go in, which it isn't at the moment. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just my thoughts on the issue anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big question, of course, and it's too big to answer, and there's no correct answer so far. So it's interesting topic, anyways, to discuss and see how it evolves in the future. Aligning and defining the one path of definition and measuring, etc. So yeah, you mentioned already. SDGs. Maybe you could tell a bit more about what exactly it is and how do you see that has affected, sustainable investments and development in the area?
Yeah, so I guess the Sustainable Development Goals are the United Nations putting together 17 global goals, and they kind of reset this every so many years. So I think the current goals we have are set for the year 2030. And again, they cover sustainability that goes beyond just the environment or the climate, but also social issues and governance issues. So yeah, I think they're really important just for kind of, I guess, the issues I mentioned earlier, to really focus on kind of directly aligning our sustainable efforts in the same direction, to have the same kind of common goals that we know we all need to strive for. So it's incredibly important, and I think it is something that is used a lot in the industry as a benchmark for sustainability. And as I mentioned, in kind of smaller aspects like ESG scoring, definitely. I know someone in the chats mentioned EU taxonomy. Definitely, that is also kind of similarly a really good classification system in kind of, I suppose, guiding environmentally sustainable economic activities. So yeah, I guess these things are really important and definitely used as a benchmark in the industry, but should be used more. Whereas I feel that a lot of institutions have their own governance issues and implications, so they kind of are quite careful with what kind of sustainable or ESG methods they introduce, and don't want to go too extreme because they've been operating in the same ways for however many years and have their own relationships with other players. So definitely there's a lot more that could be done, and I feel that there's definitely bigger commitments that these big institutions need to make that are aligned with all of these goals, because they're the institutions that can make the biggest difference in the world, to be honest. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So we have gone through some main things in the sector and some challenges as well we're facing, and maybe there's anything you would like to add, under the umbrella of green finance, as biggest challenges we're facing. I don't know, for example, data availability and clarity is a huge issue, as we don't have the right tools and how to measure sustainable impact on, at least we don't have most accurate maybe and aligned data, as we already discussed previously. But maybe you have something to add as another big area we should have our focus on in the near future to basically monitor the any other areas, or
I'd say, I mean, I guess slightly biased, I would say pensions is a huge untapped area that if people were engaged in, and if there were really easy, accessible options to start making those investments more sustainable, then that would really make a huge amount of difference. But in terms of anything else, I know I also already mentioned it, but I think commitments to net zero are huge. I think companies are starting to do it, which makes and encourages their competitors to want to make those commitments as well. So it kind of is obviously a bit of a marketing trend for these institutions to be kind of making these big announcements, but generally it's doing a huge kind of making a huge difference in the industry for sure. I know there's other NGOs, non-government organizations, who we work with, one really important one called Make My Money Matter, who are essentially shouting about the same issue that we are about pensions engagement, but they're also actually working directly with financial institutions to make them commit to specific net zero commitments, and also guiding them through carbon offsetting processes as to what they can do to offset their emissions faster. And I would say that, I mean, that's definitely probably one of the biggest things an institution can do for the sustainability, and definitely a really important one for sure.
Okay, thanks. So we have noticed some challenges that we're facing, and maybe you could maybe you see some trends within fintech sector that are or will possibly solve these challenges, or in other words, what fintechs are doing or could do to support transition to more sustainable finance, or try to fix these challenges that we have talked about already. Maybe you have, I don't know, some examples that fintechs already are solving them, or something like that.
There's definitely loads of great fintechs out there that are doing loads for kind of sustainability and helping other bigger institutions in the finance sector. I guess one big thing is sustainable investment platforms. So a lot of startup platforms have been created solely with the purpose to invest in sustainable avenues. And I think this is a trend that we would definitely see more of. I think already people are choosing these technology platforms based on the fact that they are kind of more sustainable. And also, I guess there's a huge market for the younger generation who are firstly much more interested in sustainable issues than any other previous generation, and secondly are more interested and involved with their own personal finances than any other previous generation of this age. And I guess this is also because the younger generation is much more tech savvy. They've grown up with technology, and as technology has progressed in finance to make investments etc. more accessible, the two have gone hand in hand. So therefore, young people that are able to navigate technology better can navigate their own finances better. And behind that, they also are more interested in sustainability. So that's a huge, huge area that lots of fintechs are operating in at the moment. And that's building these new kind of young, operatable, easy to use, sustainable investment platforms, which are fantastic. And yeah, like I say, there's many of them at the moment that are really up and coming, and essentially encouraging these young people who are just getting into this industry and getting into investments to be putting that money directly into the most sustainable avenues that they have access to. So that's definitely a huge one there. Lots of fintechs are, creating new solutions around this kind of investment area for sustainability.
Okay, thank you very much. Absolutely, another big topic to go into and follow up. About the younger generation and what fintechs are doing in that area. As that's the new world after 10-20 years.
Yeah.
So I thought I could skip this question, but it has made so much impact, I think, on different sectors to not ask it. So how you see current pandemic situation has influenced the green finance sector in terms of investments and possible fintech development, speed of development, etc. So has it, escalated or slowed down, or what, angles do you see there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's objectively speaking that the pandemic has encouraged more people not only to be more involved with their own personal finances, but also it has been a big push for sustainable avenues. And why this is, I don't think anyone could say for sure. But I guess my own opinion on the sustainability front is that obviously we got to a point in, I think, the first lockdown last year where everybody, the world was on pause, nobody was traveling. It was, a saving grace for the environment to have a breather. And, we saw dolphins come back to Venice. Everyone online was going crazy because wildlife had returned. And I think my opinion is that that was a bit of an eye-opener to how much damage our daily lives cause, and that if we adjusted our lifestyles ever so slightly, not to say that lockdown was a slight lifestyle adjustment, but yeah, I think that definitely allowed people to kind of realize, take a step back and kind of think about those issues. And also in terms of finances, statistically speaking, undeniably more people this year have been more engaged with their personal finances. I think in most people's day-to-day life, it's some annoying admin that people don't want to think about, is checking up on their pension or their investments. But obviously, if you have kind of more time, it's that thing that everyone knows they should be doing. So I guess it's then when people start thinking, oh, actually, where is my money kind of going? Could it be going somewhere that's actually benefiting the world, benefiting the environment? So I would say, obviously, the pandemic, COVID-19, had so many ups and downs, but in terms of sustainability and finance, it has given us a massive opportunity to engage these people that are becoming more interested in their finances and becoming very interested in sustainability, to actually make proactive decisions within finance, and essentially kind of make it as sustainable as they possibly can do.
Okay, thank you very much, Cara. I think I have covered we have covered some areas on green finance and the sector itself in general, and some fintech trends that we see affecting this area. And I see that we don't have any questions yet, but I wanted to say thank you, Kerra, for all the insights you have shared with us this evening. And I think we have somewhat touched important areas and defined some challenges, and watched how fintech is working its way to more sustainable finance. And I think we have some time, but as no questions have appeared, in general, I'm wishing our world and you as more sustainable future and really thoughtful, mindset of what are you doing in both in your daily life or financial life. It always can impact the future and different areas. So yeah, if you have something to add in the end of this event.
Yeah, well, just thank you for listening. Obviously, I'm not hugely kind of aware of the green finance scene in Latvia, but obviously I think it's a hugely important topic globally. And I think, for any students listening, definitely a really interesting area to become more involved in. Absolutely. It's, extremely exciting. New developments are occurring all the time. It's obviously a really, important area to, devote your attention to. And I guess as young people as well, the trend of making own investments is becoming more popular. You have apps like Moneybox that make this really simple and accessible. And I guess just thinking in the back of your mind, I wonder where this 10 euros or whatever it is going, and sustainable, and being maybe asking more questions like how sustainable is this investment option, is something definitely to take away for people for the rest of your life. It's really important to kind of understand this, and ensure that where you're invested is aligning with your own personal beliefs and ethical beliefs and sustainable beliefs and all of these things. So really important issue.
Okay. Thank you, Kerra, very much for all the insights from your side, and it was, I think, a great discussion, and I hope to see more from Tumelo in future and bigger scope as well. So, wishing best of luck to you, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dāvis. Okay, bye.
Yeah, take care. Bye. Thank you. And